Hello. Ooh, sorry. So no worries about not being able to make it to class. That's why I do recording, so then you can watch it on your own time. If you have any questions about how I set this up, questions about the questions themselves, or if I don't go in depth on something that you have more questions about, text me, let me know, and we can set up like office hours or something, like some time to chat and kind of go over this game and answer your questions more in depth. But for today, we're going over 72 game 2. And from the looks of it, it looks like this is a pretty basic ordering game. So we have on a single day, my pen's not connected. Whoops. There we go. Okay. So on a single day, a realtor will show a client 5 houses, exactly one in each of 5 neighborhoods. So we have Q, R, S, T, and V. Each house will be shown to the client exactly once, and the order of which the houses are shown are the following. Okay, so just for clarification, this game kind of makes it a little weird in that like our variables are the neighborhoods, not the houses, but they're still like, they're kind of considered the same thing. So initially when I read this, I was like, okay, cool. What are the houses? And our variables are the neighborhoods. So they're one and the same thing. So you can see in the rules themselves, the house in Rivertown, it doesn't really specify like house A, house B, or anything like that. So these are our variables, and we have to figure out when the realtor is going to show them to the clients. So that's how we know we're ordering them. Okay. So like I said, pretty basic ordering setup. Nothing too fancy. We're not grouping it with, I know nothing about real estate, but like we're not grouping it with I don't know, like insurance people or something like that. We're not doing 2 double ordering games. We're not pairing them with anything. We're not doing anything like that. We're just simply ordering them. So pretty basic ordering game. So rule number 1 says the house in Riverton must be shown either first or second. Now, this is a rule that I really wouldn't write out because there's only 2 options, first or second. That's it. That's a pretty basic rule that I can just kind of make my diagrams right off the bat. I'm not going to worry about wasting time writing them out. If you need to write them out, it takes all of 2 seconds to write out a rule. So feel free to write it out. If I were to write out the rule, I would probably do something like R is 1 or 2, something simple like that. But I really think this is a rule that I wouldn't even really write out. I would just go straight ahead and split it because I only have 2 options for R. It's either in 1 or it's in 2. So I'm going to split the worlds up. R is in one of the worlds, R is in 2 in the other world. I don't have to think about it anymore. R is taken care of. And so instead of worrying about that, I only have 4 variables to worry about, which is great. If you can eliminate a rule like that very quickly, very simply, or it may not even have to be a rule as simple as that, but you can see it can be split up into a certain way. It's pretty easy for you to see that. Do it right then and there. Don't worry about writing it out because you don't need to write the rules out to actually answer the questions. So, okay, first rule is done. Second rule says the house in Townsend must be shown either first or fifth. Okay, this is another rule that I probably wouldn't really write out because like rule 1, T only has 2 places it can go. And in fact, you can see in both of them, it's talking about that first spot. So technically our first spot is either R or T. So it'll be really easy to throw in T here because if I look at my worlds, I'll write out the rule just for sake of writing it out. R is either 1 or 2, or sorry, T is either 1 or 2. I can look at my first world and go, R is taking up my first spot, which means that, oh, why did I say 2? It's in the 5th. I'm thinking of the first rule. I can look at that first world and just go, okay, well, T's got to go 5th. If R is taking up my first spot, T has to take up my 5th spot. Now, world number 2 is a little bit different. It's not forcing T to go anywhere, but it's very similar to how that R rule was. I either have T in 1 or I have T in 5. So I'm just going to break it up and have one where T is in 1, T is in 5. Again, super easy. Don't really need to rewrite that rule because I can just throw T in there. Now remember, every time we go into a new rule, we have to go all the way back up to our first world. So that's why we took it as world 1 and world 2, and then split world 2 into world 3. So that's actually really nice. I don't have to worry about R, T anymore. They're already placed. And I still have 2 more rules left, which kind of gives me an idea that it's probably going to be a pretty set in stone diagram because I only have 3 variables left. So honestly, I could kind of probably just throw them in there without even looking at the rest of the rules and come up with diagrams. But we're going to go through the rules, and I have a feeling this will be fairly easy to throw in. So the next one says the third house shown must be the house in Q or the house in V. Okay. For this rule, you can write it out to the side if you want. This is another rule where I can kind of just write something in there. For the sake of it, because it's talking about the two variables of 3 that I have left over, I have a feeling that considering I have 1 more rule left, something is going to force whether it be Q or V in there. So rather than writing 3 additional worlds and having one where Q is in one, or sorry, where Q is in that spot or where V is in that spot, I'm just going to kind of put in placeholders right now. Q can either go in there or V can go in there. I know one of them is going to have to go in there. And it's a shorter way of writing out that rule, so we don't have to create additional worlds, especially if we don't have to. So, okay, looking at that last rule, says the house in Q cannot be shown either immediately before or immediately after S. So this is a rule that I kind of call them these rules where it's kind of 2 rules in one, because it's got that or in there, either immediately before or immediately after. So if I were to write this rule out, I could write it out in, I would probably write it out something like Q, S, doesn't matter what order they in, they hate each other. I can't have Q and S next to one another. The other way you can write it out if you need something a little more clarifying, I guess you could say, I can block them and slash them out. So that way, if I see Q or S touching each other, I know it's a dead world. They hate each other. So knowing that, and knowing that Q or V is going to be in that third spot is going to help me kind of figure out where my Q and S are going to go. And it's going to force that V to happen. So rather than writing out all these worlds, these 3 additional worlds, I can actually save myself some time and some space by just doing something like this. So if I'm looking at the first world and I know Q and S hate each other, if I think about it, there's no way that Q can go in 3, because on either side, I have 2 empty spaces. Those are my 2 empty spaces. S is going to have to go in one of them. So no way can Q be in there because it would be touching S. So we know that actually now V is going to have to be forced into there. And I kind of mentioned it, well, doesn't really have any play into this, but my remaining variables Q and S, because they hate each other, they can't touch each other, they're split up by V. So it really doesn't matter which one goes first. There's nothing that tells me that Q has to go before S or S has to go before Q. So I'm going to say Q and S flip-flop. And that's good. Okay. Looking at number 2. If I know that Q and S hate each other, I know I have to split them up in some way. So if I think about it, if I put V in 3, that can't work because my 2 empty spaces are next to each other. And putting V in there is going to put Q and S together. So that means that we are going to have to put Q in there, which means that our remaining variables, V and S, if we know that S hates Q, has to be split up by at least one variable, which means that V is going to go here, S is going to go here. If that is too difficult for you to see, or if you're really struggling with kind of picturing Q and V in their respective spots and what could happen, break it up. So I'll break up world number 3 just for the sake of it. So if it's really hard for me to picture where Q and V, what happens if I put Q or V in there? I'm just going to break it up. If you can mentally see the variables move around and it's easy for you, fine, perfect, do it. But don't try to stare at it and figure it out and try to do it in a time section, because you're just wasting time staring at your diagram. If you're able to mentally see it, then do it. If not, break it up, because you are probably going to spend less time breaking it up than staring at it and mentally trying to do it. So we're going to break it up. So we're going to have one world where V is in that third spot and one world where Q is in that third spot. And actually, now that I broke this up, I probably would have broken this up, because two different things happen. So for example, in world 1 and 2, it kind of forces our Q and V and S to go into certain places, or at least to split them up in a certain way. But in these two worlds, Q and V could go in that third spot, and we can still have valid worlds. So for example, in world number 3, Q hates S. That means S is going to go in 1, V is going to go in 4. Q and S hate each other still in world 4, which means that they can flip-flop. Because again, doesn't say which one has to go first, just says that they hate each other. And those are all of our worlds. That was the last rule that we had to go through, which means that we don't have anything else to worry about. And actually, most of our variables are pretty much in set places. There's only 2 worlds that we really have to remember that Q and S are flipping between. So it's a pretty nice game to us. Not a whole lot of worlds. Most of our variables are in set places. I like when games do this. It's really nice. Okay, so we're going to go into our questions. So this game actually has a pretty interesting first question. Usually your first question is going to be kind of a list question. Which one of the following is an accurate representation of the houses that are shown? But this one doesn't, which is kind of interesting. So we don't have to worry about a list question. So in that case, we're just going to go straight into it. We're going to use our diagrams. We're going to narrow down what's happening in our diagrams to answer our questions. Get a different pen color. Okay, so we have number 7 says, if the house in Q is shown fourth, which one of the following must be true? So this is an if question. It's giving us a restriction. We are only allowed to use the worlds where Q can be shown fourth. And that only happens in 1 and 4. Even though Q and S flip-flop, we can still make it so Q is on the fourth one in both of those worlds. I have the luxury of using a different colored pen and being able to erase it. In real life, I wouldn't recommend that. It's going to take a lot of time to switch between pens. Honestly, cover it up with your fingers so you can actually see, okay, if I put Q in 4, S is going to go into Q in 4, S is going to go into 1. It's a lot easier, and you're not messing up your diagrams. So we're looking for something that has to be true, which means it has to happen in both the worlds that we're looking at. 100% must happen. So we can actually predict this answer. Must be true questions are fairly easy to predict, because if it has to be true in all the worlds that you're looking at, that means that you can just look at the worlds and see what's consistent in both of them. So I can actually look through my world and see what is the same. So we have V is third, Q is fourth. I'm not going to give you that one because that's the prompt. And T is fifth. So V is third, T is fifth. Those are my 2 must be true things that I'm seeing in there. So I can actually go through and see if I have either of those answer choices. T is first, nope. V is third. Looky there. There's my answer choice. And I don't have to spend any more time on it. Nothing else has to be true. So must be trues are super easy to predict. Even if you can't predict them or struggle to predict them, you can still go through your answer choices and eliminate them. But you can at least do it in a quicker way. Okay. Next one says the order in which the houses are shown is fully determined if which one of the following is true. People get really stumped on these questions. I don't know why, but they're very intimidating. So for completely determined questions, I have a checklist for you. Basically, a completely determined question is saying your answer choice better be able to put in every single variable in its certain spot. You better be able to tell me where all those variables are for 100% certainty. So my checklist goes like this. So first, we're going to have to make sure that it only comes from one world. Because if it's coming from two worlds, we have two worlds for a reason. If you look at the worlds that we have created, our four worlds, not one of them is the same. So if it's coming from one world, that means that we've got a certain ordering that doesn't happen in another one of our worlds. The second part of that checklist is, okay, great, we have one world. Now we have to make sure that all of our variables are in place. So like worlds that have flip-flopping variables, like our Q and our S, not going to be one of our answer choices because Q and S can flip-flop. You can't tell me for 100% certainty if Q or S is in that second spot. And we need to be able to place every single variable in its spot. So if you go through that checklist, you should be able to get to the correct answer, but we'll go through our answer choices and go through that checklist as an example. So answer choice A says, okay, rude. Okay. Answer choice A says the house inquiry is shown third. This is not our answer choice because if you look over here, I have two worlds that it's coming from. Yes, the first, or actually our middle three variables are the same, but these end variables are different. We can't determine for 100% certainty if T or S is in that first spot. Even though they're all determined in their own worlds, we can't tell, or I should say, you can't tell me who's in that first spot because it could be T or S. So it's coming from two worlds. I don't like that answer choice. We're going to cross that off. The house in Riverton is shown first. Okay, so if we go through our checklist, I like that it comes from one world. We only have one scenario where R is in that first spot. But I kind of said this earlier, Q and S are flip-flopping. You can't tell me who's in that second spot. It's either going to be Q or it's going to be S. So we can eliminate that one. Okay, there we go. The second one, or sorry, our third answer choice says the house in S is shown second. Let's see what we got there. This is the only world where that can happen. And if I put S in second, that's going to force Q in 4. I like this answer choice. It's coming from one world, and I know who's in each spot. I can tell you that R is first, S is second, V is third, Q is fourth, T is fifth. I have no doubts of that. So I like this answer choice. I'm going to pick it. Let's go through D and E. D says the house in Townsend is shown fifth. I hate this one. It's actually happening in 3 worlds. Every world except number 2, I have T in that 5th spot. So this is a pretty easy one to see why we have to only come from one world. I can't tell you who's in that 3rd spot. It's either Q or V. I can't tell you who's in that 4th spot. It's either Q, V, or S. You have so many variables. So this is one that I can easily take out. Maybe. B is shown 4th. Hate this one. It's coming from, come on, pen. It's coming from 2 worlds where I have V as 4th. So I can't tell you for sure who is in that 5th spot. It's either S or T, and then in that 1st spot as well. I can't tell you who's in that 1st spot. And if you say to yourself, well, they're all determined in each of the worlds, ask yourself who's in that 1st spot. You're going to say, well, it's either T or S. That answers your question. It doesn't completely determine it because you have this either or. So our answer choice is C. Once I have S in my 2nd spot, I know where all of my houses are. Okay. Next one, number 9, says if the house in S is shown earlier than the house in Q, which one of the following must be true? Okay, so I'm going to write this if out because it's restricting me to when S is earlier than Q, which is going to look something like this. We have to have S before Q. So I'm going to look into my worlds and see which worlds we're looking at. Could happen in 1. I can force S to go before Q there. It happens in 3. S is before Q. Could happen in 4. S is before Q. So now we're looking for something that must be true in all the worlds. You can either predict this one or you can just go straight into the answer choices. I'm going to try to predict this one. Let's see here. Nothing's the same in 1. Nothing's the same in 2. Nothing's the same in 3. Nothing's the same in 4. Aha! We have our T in 5. That happens in all the worlds. I look to my answer choices. A, that's my D answer choice. That's going to be my answer. Again, if you go through your answer choices, you can still narrow it down because it has to be true in all the worlds. So for example, A, Q is shown 4th. Does not have to be true. I can have that third one be a V. So the moment you say, well, it could be true in this world, but not in this world, that's wrong. You're looking for a must be true. If it was a could be true question, then it could be correct. But we're looking for must be true. Okay. Next one. Which one of the following could be true? Okay, so we have no if, we have no restrictions, so we're looking at all of our worlds. We're looking for something that could be true, which means that even if it happens once, that's enough for it to be our right answer. So it just has to happen 1% of our time. So let's go through our answer choices. These are kind of hard to predict, and really, especially when you don't have an if, like restricting you, they're almost near impossible to predict because anything could be true. So going through your answer choices is just the fastest and easiest way. Could it be true that we have Q shown first? Could be true here in my 4th world. I hate when my answer choice is A or E because it freaks me out. So I like A. I'm going to keep it as is. I'm going to go through B and E just to verify, but I have a feeling it will be A. B says Q is shown 5th. I have no world where Q is in 5, so that one's wrong. V is shown first. No world where V is shown first. Wrong. Wrong. V is shown 2nd. No worlds where V is 2nd, so that's wrong. V is shown 5th. No worlds where V is shown 5th, so that's wrong. So it's going to lead me to my answer choice being A, which again causes me anxiety when my answer choice is A or E because I always second guess myself. But all the other answer choices are wrong, so I have to pick A. Next one says, if a house in V is shown 3rd, which one of the following must be true? So I'm going to look at my worlds and see which ones that's happening in. So we have V in 3 and 1, V in 3 and 4. Which one of the following must be true? I'm going to try to predict this one if possible. See which ones, what it has to be similar in all of them. I'm seeing T. T is pretty consistent. That's V is 3rd, but that's our answer, our prompt. So I'm looking for T is 5, which is answer choice E. That's going to be my answer. All the other ones don't have to be true. So it could be true in one of the worlds, but it has to be true in both of my worlds because it's a must be true. So even though like A, even though we could have Q 4th in both of my worlds, we could also have S 4th because of that flip flop. So it does not have to be true. Okay, so number 12 is a substitute question, which substitute questions are not worth your time, especially if you're not getting the correct answers on everything else except substitute questions, because they can take a lot more time and are only worth a point. So I'd rather you spend 5 minutes setting up the next game rather than 5 minutes on this 1 point problem. But we'll go over it. So it says, which one of the following, if substituted for the constraint, the house is either first or second, would have the same effect in the order in which the houses are shown. So substitute questions must produce the same diagrams that we have. We can't create any new ones. We can't like disallow any old ones that we have. We have to make sure that we're creating the exact same ones. So for substitute questions, I split them up into 2 phases. Phase 1 is where we go over and eliminate the ones that do not have to be, basically the ones that would eliminate some of the diagrams that I have. So for example, if I go through Answer choice A, the house cannot be shown fourth. I mean, that technically is true. That must be true in all my worlds. I have Q, S, or V in fourth. So we'll leave that one open for now. B says the house in Riverton must be shown earlier than the house in V. So R must be shown earlier than V. That has to be true in all of my worlds. I have R before V. We'll leave that one open. The house in V must be shown either third or fourth. That has to be true. V is either in 3 or 4. The house in Q must be shown immediately before or immediately after R. That does not have to be true because I could put Q over here and S over here and we don't have a world, or it would basically prevent us from using this world because we don't have Q and R touching each other. So we can eliminate this one because it does not have to be true. Last one, E, if the house in Townsend is not shown fifth, then it must be shown immediately before the house in Riverton. That has to be true. If Townsend's not shown fifth, then we're in that second world and it's immediately before Riverton. So at the very least, if you have a couple minutes left over, you can at least go into phase 1 and eliminate some of your answer choices, and you can at least narrow down your answer choice. And some of the easier ones, actually phase 1 is enough to kind of get your answer choice. So you may get lucky, or you may have a really tough one and none of them get eliminated. But in this case, we could at least narrow it down to 4 answer choice rather than 5. Phase 2 is what I called like the mind mushing phase, because we have to make sure that they're not creating any new worlds. So any worlds where I could basically violate my original rule. So if I can create a world in A using A's rule and have R be 3, 4, or 5, that's creating a new scenario where I don't have R in 1 or 2. We basically have to find an answer choice that is going to force R to be in 1 or 2. So looking at A, the house in Townsend cannot be shown fourth. Well, that really doesn't do a whole lot. It just means that R can't go 4. So, I mean, technically, I guess I could put R in 5, T in 1, V in 3, Q in 2, S in 4. I could create a whole new world just on the basis of R not being in 4. It's not restrictive enough. It's not forcing R to go into 1 or 2. So that is not my answer choice. Okay. Looking at answer choice B, the house in Riverton must be shown earlier than the house in V. So if we're trying to violate our rule, I'm not going to try to make a world where R is in 1 or 2, because that would just be the same as our original rule, and we're trying to violate it. R can't go in 3 because it's either Q or V. So that means that R is either in 4 or 5. Let's see here. R is in 4, V's in 5. T is in 1, Q and S would be touching each other. So that can't work. And we can't make R in 5 because then it's not before V. So this is probably our answer choice. It's basically going to force R to be in 1 or 2, because we can't make a world where R is in 4, V's in 5. We can't have that happen in accordance with all of our other rules. So because we can't make any new worlds and it's going to force R to be in 1 or 2, I like this as my answer choice for now. We're going to go through C. Ooh. We're going to go through C and E and see if we can create any new worlds. So for answer choice C, the house in V must be shown either 3rd or 4th. Okay, right off the bat, I'm not liking this answer because it has nothing to do with R. So technically, if I wanted to, I could do something like R in 5, T in 1, Q in 2, S in 4. Or T. No. Basically, I can create a whole new world here with this answer choice. So because I can create a new world, I can violate that original rule. It's not my answer. Looking at E, there's my pen. If the house in Townsend is not shown 5th, then it must be shown immediately before the house in Riverton. Okay, So this is a little bit more challenging because it's this if. Our if rules do not have to happen. So technically this really doesn't change a whole lot, because if we have t in 5, let's say we have t in 5, this rule is still followed, or well, I guess not really. Let's say t is in 1, because if it's not in 5, then it's going to be in 1 according to our rule. And that means that it must be shown immediately before the house in Riverton. That would technically force R to go in 2, but I don't now have the option for it to go in 1. And even if we said T is shown in the 5th spot, which would be the other option for T, because our if rules don't have to apply, T could be in that 5th spot and then the rule just wouldn't apply. We can still violate our original rule, because we can still have R be in, let's say 4, we have Q in 3, S in 1, V in 2. So in the first part, T being in 1 doesn't allow me to have R have the option to be in 1. So it's not, or it's too restrictive. My other option of T being in 5 is not restrictive enough. I can break that original rule. So I can put R in 4 and still have a valid diagram. So my answer choice then becomes B, because it's the only one that's going to force R to be in 1 or 2, or have the option of being in 1 or 2. So B is our answer choice. Again, these questions are very difficult. These substitute questions are very difficult. If you're not getting everything correct in your section, except for substitute questions, do not worry about them. Honestly, don't even watch the explanation. Don't try to figure it out, because if you're struggling on the easier questions, these are going to be damn near impossible. I'd rather you spend the 5 minutes or 6 minutes on building your next diagram than this 1-point question. And let's say you miss all of the substitute questions but get everything else correct. In the LSAT history, there has never been more than 3 substitute questions on a section. So, or sorry, more than 2 substitute questions on a section. So the very least you're getting a 21 and a 23 on your section. That's still enough to get a 170. So these substitute questions are not something that you have to nail. They're just good points and are doable, but I wouldn't worry about them if you're at a beginner level. So if you have any questions about this game, about this diagram, about these questions, text me, let me know, and we'll set up something. So thanks for watching.